And I am very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker, Michael Seibel. His visit is for sure one of the main highlights of this year and maybe of the years to come. Thank you so much for your time and for being so generous with ITAM and ITAM students. So now let me introduce Michael. Michael graduated from Yale University with a degree in political science. In 2007, Michael co-founded Justin TV and became its CEO from 2007 to 2011. In 2014, Justin TV became Twitch Interactive, and under the leadership of Emmett Shear and Kevin Lin, sold to Amazon for $970 million. Michael is also a co-founder of SocialCam, a mobile app for Android and the iPhone that allows users to capture, edit, share, and view videos online. And this venture participated in Y Combinator and sold to Autodesk for $60 million. After that, in 2014, Michael became full-time partner at Y Combinator. Y Combinator, also known as YC, provides seed funding for startups. Twice a year, YC invests a small amount of money in a large number of startups. Since 2005, YC has funded over 1,000 startups and has built a community of over 2,400 founders. YC's companies have a combined valuation of over $65 billion, which include companies like Dropbox and Airbnb. We're thrilled to have the opportunity to listen to Michael's presentation, How to Start a Startup. Please join me in welcoming Michael Seibel.
Hello, everybody. So I want to keep this super informal. I don't like giving presentations. I like answering questions. So I'm going to give you guys this quick kind of overview of how we see startups at YC, but mostly what I want to do is answer your questions. So either listen to this or ignore the next 20 minutes and write down really good questions. Before I begin, how many of you have heard of Y Combinator? Holy shit, okay. How many of you want to be founders of companies within the next 5 years? Fuck, okay. I'm talking to the right group. Okay, so let's get started. How to start a tech company. When I start, I always say something very simple. Doing a startup is very hard, but it is not very complex. And you need to understand that. It's a very important point. It is hard, it's challenging, every day you work very hard, but it's actually a very simple thing to do and anyone can do it. I am not technical. I got a poli-sci major. I took 5 years to graduate from Yale, not 4. They kicked me out 1 year. I had a horrible GPA. And I'm doing okay. So, the original idea for Justin TV was an online reality TV show. So there's no way your idea is any worse than an online reality TV show. I already have the worst idea. So there's really no reason why any of you can't start a company. Okay. So this is what I tell people when they're thinking about what do I need to get started. And it's important that all of you guys are thinking about this in school because school is actually the best place to start laying the groundwork for creating your startup. The first thing is your team. So how many of you people write code? Okay. Raise your hand if you don't write code. Okay, you guys better meet those other guys. This might be your last chance to be in a room with people who write code. And technology companies innovate and create differentiation through engineering, not through business, through engineering. So the reason why Google is better than every other search engine is not because they were the first ones to think of a search engine. It's that they built a better search engine than anyone else. So in college is a unique opportunity to become friends with the engineers that will eventually become your co-founders. Now, speaking to the engineers, you don't necessarily need business people. Yeah. But Sometimes they're nice to have around. For example, some of the things that I did when I first started was I cooked dinner for the team, I cleaned the house, I found our apartment where we lived, I paid the bills, I set up the bank account, you know, the things that you need to kind of get done. And then as we launched, I became more important, and as we started raising money, I became more important. But this is like a really important thing. There's this balance between the people who can build and the people who can take care of, in the beginning, what we call the shit work. And it's really, really important for you to find the people that you really enjoy working with, whether tech or business, and to make those relationships now. So, 2 to 4 people, 50% tech, friends or colleagues. That's a very long way of saying that shortly. I often recommend that people save a year's worth of cash. Now, this does not mean a year's worth of, you know, we're rich living in a nice apartment with a Tesla. This means like the bare minimum you absolutely need to survive in a horrible place to live. But you want to give yourself a little bit of runway because you can't ensure that you're going to raise money up front. In fact, your goal should not be to raise money up front. Your goal should be to launch and then raise money. So if you're working a job, if your parents gave you some money, or if you got a credit card or two, whatever you need to do, have some money. A little bit goes a long way. And then 3, startups are about going all in. When companies apply to YC, 6,000 companies apply, about 100 to 125 get in. I read about 500 applications. Each partner reads about 500. I'm not looking to say yes, I'm looking to say no. The first thing I look for is, are the founders committed? If you're not committed, why should I be? So if you're a founder, you're all in. If this isn't for you, if you want to be a half-time founder, well then, good luck. So, idea. Notice what came first, right? Team came first. Team was on this slide. Idea is on this slide. This is actually very, very important. I care much less about your idea. As someone who is investing in startups, I don't know whether you have a good idea or not. And almost no one does. I was one of the first 30 users of Dropbox. I was one of the first 500 users of Twitter. I loved Dropbox, had no idea it was going to become a billion-dollar company. I did not like Twitter, I hated Twitter, and I had no idea it was going to become a billion-dollar company. I had no idea Airbnb was going to be a billion-dollar company, and I knew those guys since day one. So nobody knows whether you have a good idea, including you. You do know whether you have a good team, and with a good team you can build anything. You can always change your idea. When you're thinking about ideas, I think it's really important to brainstorm them with people that you want to work with. The typical construction that fails is business guy with genius idea tries to recruit tech person to build it and gives them 1% of the stock. That fails. Don't do that. The better construction is a group of friends are shooting the shit, talking about stuff, and they come up with a cool idea together. And that way, everyone in that group feels some ownership. Everyone in that group feels like this is their startup, not the other person's. Oftentimes, VCs and like investors will say, think about personal problems. I think what's important for a lot of startups is, do you have some type of personal experience or like 1-degree separation experience where you can kind of understand the product that you're building? It's a lot harder to build a product for a user that you don't understand or that is not you. It's one of the reasons why you tend to see more consumer startups amongst younger founders and more B2B startups amongst older founders, because older founders have had time in companies and there are all these things that they wish they had. So think about this. It's much more important that you actually have some unique insight on this problem, that you have some special take, that you can look at your personal experience, your family's experience, a friend's experience, and really think, oh, I might have thought of something that other people haven't, as opposed to kind of survey the business landscape and say, oh, I think this is an opportunity, but I don't know anything about this. Harder. The last thing is, think about how often people have the problem you're trying to solve. The perfect example I give for this is People always complain about car buying websites. Why are car buying websites so crappy? Well, you think you're the user, but the average person who buys a car keeps it for 7 years. If you're the user of a car buying website and I give you an amazing experience, you only come back 7 years later. So you're not the user. That's why it sucks. The user is the car dealership because they've got to sell a car every day. In fact, they've got to sell multiple cars every day. So I bet whatever interface they're using looks real nice. The thing you use sucks. So think when you're doing a startup, how do you solve a customer problem that they have often? Uber is a great example. Most people have to go to another location multiple times a day. That means multiple times a day, Uber has a chance to win their business. So that's important. Market. The best way of saying this is that the people who want to invest in your company, an easy way of thinking about them is they don't really give a shit about your idea or about you. They want to make money. And there is some really important math you need to understand. If I've raised a fund and I've got my 10 partners with me and we've raised a fund, let's say it's a $100 million fund. Basically, our return, what comes to us, is 20%. It's called carry. That's what comes to us. And now we've split that 10 ways. So I get 2% of what the fund returns. Now the fund invests in your company. Let's say the fund owns 25 to 30% of your company. How big does your company have to be for the 2% that ends up in my pocket to be worth my time? Oh, and then by the way, that 2% is sometimes taxed 30%. So if the biggest your company can be is $100 million, it is not worth my time to talk to you ever. And so people think startups, like any startup, should be able to raise money. That is false. People want to make money by investing in startups, which means you've got to be able to show people how this can be a billion-dollar company. In fact, you got to show people that it could be a $10 billion company. The perfect example of this is I often travel to Europe and talk to entrepreneurs. And I talked to a founder in Spain who wanted to build a business in Spain. And I told him, look, it's almost impossible for you to build a big enough business in Spain alone for any VC to be interested in investing in you. If you're not at least thinking Europe, it's going to be too small. So understand this. Because basically, if you can't present something that can make someone money, even if you've got the best idea, the best team, and the best execution, they have no incentive to give you money. Okay. The only other thing I would talk about when it comes to market, use the competition's product. A lot of times founders will just tell us we're doing it better, but they actually haven't even used the competitor, and they don't actually even know why it's better. There's no such thing as like a bad idea, but there is a such thing as not a well thought out one, and it doesn't take too much time to survey the competition, to talk to a couple customers. Where this goes off the rails is if you're taking more than 3 or 4 days to do this. This is not 6 months worth of research, but 3 or 4 days is a lot better than just saying, oh, I know this is better because whatever. Legal. Legal is actually very simple. If you're going to raise money in the United States, and if you have to raise a lot of money, most of you will have to raise it in the United States, you need to be a Delaware C Corp. YC funds tons of international companies. Over 20% of our batch is international, and about 50% of our batch are not US citizens. And so, but they all create Delaware C Corps. They all do it with this website, clerky.com. And Clerky basically is your lawyer for the first year of your startup. It has all the paperwork you need, and it's all the paperwork that YC companies use, so you can trust that it's good. And it's inexpensive. MVP. How many of you guys know what an MVP is? Boom. Okay, the biggest problem with startup MVPs is that they're not MVPs. Usually, in most cases, it doesn't take more than 2 weeks to build an MVP. Now think about the MVP you guys are thinking about building. I'm sure you guys have heard the quote, if you're not painfully embarrassed by your initial product, you took too long building it. What I often tell people is how fast can you get something in users' hands? Your initial customers, the people who actually use new startup stuff, are infinitely forgiving. I mean, most of the stuff they use sucks and fails. So it doesn't matter if you give them something crappy, that's what they're used to. What does matter is if you don't give them something. And what I often tell people is that the first product you build is going to be 90% wrong. Do you want to take 6 months to build something 90% wrong, or 2 weeks to build something 90% wrong? You only learn how to make it right once customers start using it. So build it fast. I guess it's just another way of saying that. Really, pre-launch is like, I mean, it's not that YC doesn't accept pre-launch companies, because it does all the time. But going back to my days at Justin TV, Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, called me every single day and said, "Have you launched yet?" That was the only advice. "Have you launched yet?" And I was like, "Oh, what about this?" And he would say, "Have you launched yet?" And then I would say no, and he would angrily hang up the phone. So, have you launched yet? Great. So when you're thinking about post-launch, everything is about growth. A startup is not a well-organized thing. It's extremely sloppy, always broken, and growing thing. The growth is what rescues it. If you're not growing because you're figuring things out, if you're not growing because you're paying off technical debt, if you're not growing for whatever excuse, you're failing. Growth is everything. So how do you create growth? If you're building a consumer product, typically you do not have money to acquire users. Using your product has to equal sharing your product. I'll give you a perfect example. Instagram. When you take an Instagram photo, what's the first thing they show you after you create the filters? Share. They assume every freaking photo you take, you want to share. Now, when you use the camera app on your iPhone and you take a photo, what do they show you? Nothing. So when you think about it, Instagram said, how do we beat the camera app? And the camera app's got a huge advantage. It's on everyone's phone, right? How do we beat it? Well, the way we beat it is we make sure that every time someone's using our product, they're sharing our product. Virality and growth wasn't something that they bolted on afterwards. It was core to the usage of the product. And so you need to understand that if you're building something for consumers, is that the second I'm using it, my friends should know I'm using it. And you need to assume someone wants to tell their friends, not assume they don't. If we're talking about B2B startups, really you have to work extremely hard to get your first customers, and then you have to be amazing to them. Because for B2B startups and enterprise startups, getting reference customers is huge. Oftentimes a business doesn't want to be the first or second customer, but they have no problem being the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 10th customer. So if you can convince the first 2 or 3 customers, which will feel extremely hard, and they love you, your job gets easier. The last thing is advertising. Basically, the way you should think about whether you should be using advertising is, can I make more money when the person comes to my site than it costs me to get them to come to the site? Now, if you think about Facebook, they didn't monetize for years. Facebook couldn't use ads. If you're a social product and you're trying to use ads, it's a very bad sign. If you're Uber, and every time someone uses the product you make money, well, now you can actually figure out how much money you can spend on advertising and whether you can make that money back, and then you can buy ads. So ads are not a solution for every startup. For the startups that are making money from their customers up front, though, it's a great thing. So are people talking about your company? One of the things that I think founders need to understand is that 90% of their effort, or 95% of their effort, should be on growth. 5% of their effort should be on buzz. Are people, do they know that you're growing? Do they know that you exist? There's so much value in people knowing that a company exists. Foursquare, which is one of the most crappy but buzzworthy companies, was able to raise money at a $100 million valuation and get a $100 million Yahoo exit offer when they had less than 1 million users. And the reason why was because some people on TechCrunch liked them, so they wrote about them every day. That somehow magically created $100 million worth of value. Now, when a company kind of goes too far in that direction, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Clinkle or Color, or there are a couple of those like that. It's not good. But being able to use press, being able to get people to talk about your company is a valuable tool. What you need to understand about PR is do not use PR firms, ever. Stop, always. So my co-founder and I had this little competition at all the money that we've wasted at Justin TV. And he would waste money on hiring people who were bad, that we had to fire. I would waste money on PR. I wasted $150,000 on PR, and I felt bad. So instead of paying the last PR person that we hired who sucked, I gave them a little bit of stock. That stock was worth $1 million. So I wasted $1.1 million on shitty PR. I wasted that money, so you don't have to. When you're early, reporters want to talk to you. PR firms were built to insulate the founders and executives of a company from the press. To insulate. You don't want insulation. You want press. Uber wants insulation, right? So you're the most powerful advocate of your company. You need to talk to the press. The second most important piece of advice I can give you is PR is like BD. When you want to do a biz dev deal, do you just send a cold email to 100 people? No. So why do you write a press release and send a cold email to 100 people? Useless. When you want to do a BD deal, you find somebody who knows somebody, and you get a warm connection. You maybe jump on the phone with them, talk to them. You maybe take them out for coffee, grab drinks, and you become friends. And then when reporters are your friends, you know what they do? They write about your company. I've gotten this down so good in my last startup that I could text a TechCrunch reporter and he would write a story within an hour. Because we were friends. So much better than whatever a PR firm would ever do. So think about it like that. The other thing you need to think about is that PR and news, reporters specifically, they want news. They don't want to write a profile piece on how great you guys are. News is milestones, 1 million users, $1 million made, fundraising, important hire, important biz dev deal. That's news. And when you tell a reporter about news, you don't say, oh, this is happening, can you write about it? You say, we're announcing this is happening on this date. And we want you to have the exclusive. Early stage, I always give away exclusives. Exclusive means I'm only giving you this story, no one else. And the reason why is, one, you're telling the reporter, everyone's going to know about this on this date. So if you don't write about it, you're going to lose the story. Second, you're telling them, I like you so much that I'm only going to tell you about it. And then what you do is you build a list of stories that you want to pitch in the future. I call it your queue. You always want to have 5 stories that you know are coming up. So, oh, we know we're about to hit 1,000 users. We know we're about to hit this much money. We know that we raised money. We know these things will happen in the next couple months. We put them on our list, and 2 weeks before they're about to happen, we email the PR. We email the reporter. So that's how you get press. That's it. I spent 2 years trying to get press not doing this, and it didn't work. And then I did it, and it worked. So it's very simple. Fundraising. So I was just having this conversation with a group of founders before. The number one thing you need to understand is that you do not come up with an idea and then raise money to build the idea. That's not how the game works. You come up with the idea, you build it, you show some success, and you get money as a reward. So when you're coming up with your fundraising plan, less money is better. You're coming up with a fundraising plan, faster is better than slower. And when you're doing it, you better have growth. Growth gives you the leverage to demand money. And actually, even better, if you're break even, like Airbnb was when they came through YC, not needing money gives you the leverage to have money. And I think that this is a very easy thing to understand if you think about a relationship between a man and a woman. So if a guy is going after a girl and he's being way too aggressive, the girl backs up. If the girl is going after the guy and she's being way too aggressive, the girl backs up. If you're a startup going after the investor and you're being way too aggressive, the investor backs up. But on the flip side, if you're confident because you have growth, a strong team, and a good market, and you lean back a little and the investor leans forward, you have them. So that's the dynamic. The dynamic is, how do you get the investor to come after you? Not how do you figure out the right words to go after the investor. So if you're having trouble fundraising, really, it's very simple. One, you're probably not growing. You probably come up with a reason why you need money to grow, and you won't get money, so you won't grow, so your company's going to die. Two, maybe you are growing, but you're not talking about it. Talk about it. Three, you are making the classic mistake of when the investor emails you, you immediately take the meeting. You guys know the phrase FOMO, right? Basically, raising money is about building up demand to invest in your company when you're not fundraising. And when there's enough demand, that's when you pull the trigger. And you want to create this fear of missing out because everyone wants to invest and only a couple people will be able to, and that's FOMO. So if you talk to everyone as they come in, you're not creating any FOMO at all. If you're doing your job, you're growing, you're talking about it, investors start reaching out to you and you say, we're not fundraising, we're not fundraising, we're not fundraising. And now 10 investors have reached out to you. Then you say you're fundraising, bam, you're in the driver's seat. This is how most successful rounds happen. VCs pitch a very different myth. VCs tell you that you go to their office, you give them a presentation, they write you a check. 10% of deals work that way. 90% of deals work because somebody was talking about your company, the VC heard about it, and they reached out to you. VCs wake up every day figuring out who to invest in. That's their job. If they're not investing in you, that means that you don't have something they want to invest in. And changing the words of what you're saying often is not the solution. Okay, operations. This is actually very, very simple. Don't spend any money. You're not going to have very much money because you're building before you fundraise, so it's going to be easy to not spend very much money. The only other thing I would recommend is you should look at exactly what you spend every month. This is how, at Justin TV at one point, we were 2 months from dead. We were burning $250,000 a month, and the only way we got out of that hole was every single month we looked at every single dollar we spent. You want to develop that habit early. It's very, very easy, especially for a startup that's starting because you don't have very much spending. So, but do it. Don't ignore that. Hiring. Hiring sucks. We tell companies during YC not to hire. I hate hiring. I only want to hire when I'm basically dying and absolutely need someone. Hiring is an awesome opportunity to waste time, waste money, and literally probably 80% of the people you hire are not good. For a good company, 50% of the people they hire need to be fired. So why hire? Oftentimes people think we get more work done. False. Absolutely false. You do not get more work done when you hire. You just have to have more meetings. You actually get less work done. There's a reason why Microsoft doesn't do much, because there's a fuck ton of people there. So stay small. I always think about hiring as, what is the core group, the smallest core group of people that can basically build this product and get it to grow super fast? That's all you want. And when you get it to go super fast, then you can raise more money, and then that gives you the ability to hire. But people don't create the growth. The growth gives you the money to hire the people. So don't hire. Second, if you're going to hire smarter than you are. If the person you hire isn't bringing the average intelligence of the team up, don't hire them. Be fair and transparent when you hire. Don't try to trick your employees. If you're giving them stock, which you should be, you need to tell them how many total outstanding shares there are. They should know what percentage of the company they own. They should understand how vesting works. Like, how you treat your employees, 1 through 10, will determine how your employees are treated forever. And if your first 10 employees think you're dishonest, they will tell everyone. So it's just not worth it. So, do you want to know how to complete the best YC application ever? Probably, yeah. Okay. Awkwardly, it's very similar to all the shit I just said. So, do you have that team of 2 to 4 people? Do you have engineers on your team? Is your equity split equally or close to equally? These are all the things I look at when I'm reading an application. Has the team known each other for at least 6 months? Are you guys all working on the company full time? These are the things that I check the box, check the box, check the box. Nothing to do with your idea. Nothing to do with your idea. Have you launched or is launching imminent? $1 billion market, we talked about it. If you've launched, are you growing? And then most importantly, I do not want to accept companies that are going to suck in YC. Can you be at the top of your batch? That's kind of a simple concept. This is what I look at. Like I said in the beginning, it's hard to do these things, but this is not complex. This isn't a list of 1,000 things. Each application takes me 2 to 6 minutes to read. That's it. You show me these things, 9 times out of 10 you get an interview. You don't, 9 times out of 10 you don't. So if any of you are trying to organize your company in a way different than this, my question to you is why? Like, I often tell founders, you don't have to reinvent every wheel. Most companies copy 90% of what they do from other companies. They follow the pattern. And then it's that 10% difference that makes that company great. A lot of entrepreneurs try to entrepreneur every single thing in their company. They try to reinvent every wheel. I don't invest in those companies. It's a waste of time. If you can't learn from people around you, you're not going to build a great company. The YC interview. So if any of you guys get a YC interview at any point, you should feel free to email me, and I will give you these pointers again because you probably won't remember them. My email is michael@ycombinator.com. The most important thing about a YC interview is it's only 10 minutes and there's no PowerPoint, no presentations. It's just talking, and you can't demo your product for the first 5 minutes. If you cannot say what you do, you don't get in. The number one problem that founders have is if I ask them what they do, they say something, and I'm an experienced entrepreneur or whatever the fuck, and I have no idea what they're doing. You know how they say if your mom doesn't understand what you're doing, that's a bad thing? That is 100% true. Like, I can explain to my mom what Google is. It's a website where you type in what information you want in a box, and then they give you web pages that have that information on it. That sounds kind of dumb, but that's what Google is. If you say Google is organizing the world's information, I'm going to say, I don't know what the fuck Google does. And you don't get into YC. That's the biggest problem. I got to be honest. I mean, you already did all that other stuff to even get an interview. 1 out of 4 companies that get an interview get into YC. If you can say what you do, you haven't changed everything, you and your co-founders aren't literally fighting with each other in the batch, like in the room, probably going to get in. It's not as hard as it appears. Okay, so that's everything I know about startups. All right.